Today we are going to look at how the Quran never allows wife beating. The verse that is used is 434, where it has been translated as strike them or beat them. People always say, how do you as a Quran alone Muslim explain the verse where Allah says you can beat your wife? They say only the Hadith explains this. Firstly, this is implying that the Quran is not fully detailed, as Allah has said something and left the details out even though Allah says the Quran is detailed. Secondly, in 1689 Allah says, and we have revealed the book to you explaining clearly everything. If you need something to explain the Quran, then you haven't understood the Quran or took the time out to study it. Simple. There is not the slightest indication throughout the Quran that any violence is acceptable at any stage in family life. Even separation or divorce, if necessitated as the last resort, should be with justice, decency, and kindness. The divorce is allowed twice, so either remain together equitably or part ways with kindness. In 229 Allah says, when you divorce women and they reach their prescribed time, then either retain them in kindness or let them go in kindness, and do not retain them against their will in order to hurt them or to take undue advantage of them, for whoever does so is doing wrong to himself. And do not take the messages of God as mockery. Now, speaking about the root word for the translated word as beat or strike in this verse, if you look at any Arabic dictionary, you will find a long list of meanings ascribed to this word. Some meanings of this root word are to travel, to get out, to strike, to beat, to give examples, to take away, to condemn, to seal, to cover, and to explain. This root word reappears twice in its context in the same surah in 494 and 4101, meaning in both instances to go forth or travel. Translating the word in 434 as beat or strike them is completely inappropriate and contradicts the context, which repeatedly stresses reconciliation as the primary aim. How can a man physically harm his wife, even to the extent he wishes, and then seek arbitration to resolve their differences? When faced with a word that has multiple meanings, we determine the appropriate meaning based on the surrounding context, structure, and logical inference. For example, if we had translated the same root word in 1317 as beat rather than explain, the interpretation would be nonsensical. The verse would be, God thus beats the truth and falsehood. Instead, we know the Quran says, God thus explains the truth and falsehood. Those interpreting the term in 434 to signify physically beat are in essence challenging three fundamental Quranic principles. God forbids all forms of aggression. Physically harming another person constitutes an act of aggression. Allah says in 587, do not transgress, God does not like the transgressors. God tells husbands and wives to love and be kind to each other. Harming your spouse like beating up your wife goes against this kindness. Allah says in 30:21, and from His signs is that He created for you mates from yourselves that you may reside with them, and He placed between you affection and mercy. In that are signs for a people who reflect. And then in 4:19 Allah says, and live with them in kindness. For if you dislike them, perhaps you dislike a thing and Allah makes therein much good. This verse instructs men to treat their wives with kindness. Clearly, physically harming women doesn't align with anyone's idea of kindness. On the other hand, in 28:15, it is interesting to notice that when the Quran really mentions a physical act of beating or hitting, it doesn't use the word used in the verse where they say it means to beat the woman. To downplay the matter, certain scholars assert that a husband can only resort to beating his wife if she commits adultery. However, upon closer examination of this interpretation, we once more discover its inconsistency with Quranic principles. Regarding adultery, God has already decreed a specific punishment of 100 lashes. This is in 24:2. The critical point here is that the same offense should not warrant two distinct punishments. If a wife is subjected to 100 lashes for adultery and then her husband beats her too, she would effectively face two punishments for the same transgression. Whenever the Quran potentially implies strike with the same root word used in the mistranslated word, these instances typically carry symbolic connotations, such as split, smash, or break. Furthermore, in each case, the Quran provides immediate clarification regarding which body part or object to strike, split, or smash. Here are some examples. 26:63. Then we inspired to Moses, strike with your staff the sea, and it parted, and each portion was like a great towering mountain. 2:60. And recall when we said, strike with your staff the stone. 8:12. So strike them upon the necks and strike from them every fingertip. 8:50. They are striking their faces and their backs. 47:4. So when you meet those who disbelieve in battle, strike their necks. We observe the essential meaning of this specific word as leaving, separating or distancing from someone or something in all its connotations used by the Quran: travel, go out, separate or leave, as the Quran has used this root word many times to show this. Take a look at 3:156, 4:101, 43:5, 57:13, 14:24, and 18:11. There are many other verses that use the root word, so we know it has many meanings.